For some reason, BMW said that they have no plans to make an X7M, but Mercedes has no such qualms about stuffing an enormously powerful engine under the hood of the Mercedes-Benz GLS. Under this hood, we find a bi-turbo 4-liter V8 that produces 603 horsepower and 627 pound-feet of torque. It's also mated to a 21 horsepower electric motor that can add an additional 184 pound-feet of torque whenever it feels that is necessary. That's because in addition to being one of the most powerful SUVs available in America, this is also a mild hybrid. That means we have a 48-volt pancake motor between the engine and the transmission, which enables this to start and stop the engine a little bit more smoothly, a little bit more quickly in a lot of different situations. It also allows us to keep running the air conditioning system so that we can get that benefit of start-stop in some of those hotter climates. Other than that, this looks very much like the rest of the GLS lineup. It's their big and in-charge 3-row crossover. We have a lot of cargo room back here, just as you'd expect in a 3-row crossover, but not quite as much as something like a Chevy Suburban or a Cadillac Escalade, something along those lines. Remember, this is a little bit shorter, but there's a decent amount of space back there behind the 3rd row. And then we have a little bit of additional space right there under the load floor itself. Mercedes tells us that this absolutely crazy machine should be capable of 0 to 60 runs in 4 seconds flat, and I expect this to be a little bit faster than that because, as we all know with Mercedes, they tend to underrate things, so I suspect this may be around 3.9, perhaps even 3.8. That means that this could be as fast as a previous generation BMW X5 in some situations. Again, over 600 horsepower out of that engine. Now, the one thing I have to say that I don't care for in this particular model are these wheels right here. Now, the tires themselves are absolutely enormous, and that is great, but these wheels I'm not the biggest fan of. I've mentioned that in some of the other reviews before. They do harken back to some historic designs with Maybach and with Mercedes. Just not the biggest fan. They are enormous though, 23-inch wheels in this particular trim. As you'd expect in a high-end luxury vehicle, overall parts and build quality is exceptionally high in this interior. We have the same steering wheel that we see in other AMG models. Looks like it's been adapted a little bit for this vehicle. We have some knobs right there and some shift paddles on the back. Mercedes classic 2-screen infotainment system that's been running across a lot of their models lately. A lot of ambient lighting in here, carbon fiber trim, and then a very large amount of stitched leather, just as you'd expect in a high-end luxury vehicle like an S-Class. Mercedes is again positioning the GLS as the 3-row S-Class, if you will. Now, with that in mind, one thing that did surprise me is when we hop back here in the 3rd row, we don't find the same materials quality that we do see in the BMW X7. For instance, we have hard plastics over here on the side of the 3rd row, and in the X7, you can get stitched leather pretty much all the way back in the cabin. Now, on the flip side, remember that while the stitched leather is going to be luxurious in the 3rd row of the X7, it's not going to be as durable as some of the harder plastics. And that's why we don't see it in all trims of the X7. And the fact is that most shoppers of 3-row crossovers are going to keep the 3rd row folded most of the time. At this point in time, we don't know how much the GLS 63 is going to cost, but we do know that, interestingly enough, this AMG is going to have an electronic locking rear differential. In addition to giving us limited slip functionality, it can completely lock that differential for slightly better performance in adverse weather or in trickier off-roading situations. Not that most people are going to take their really expensive vehicle off-roading. We also have more carbon fiber and reinforced plastic components in here than I had expected. That's likely to help reduce the overall curb weight. Expect the GLS 63 to be on sale later in the calendar year 2020, and expect this to be one of the most expensive Mercedes models available in America. Price-wise, this should be relatively comparable to certain categories of Mercedes-Benz S-Class, but it is going to be less expensive than the Maybach version of the GLS that's going to be coming up very soon. Until then, be sure and hit that subscribe button down there at the bottom of your screen, and of course, check out the rest of our coverage from the 2019 LA Auto Show. I'll see you later.